Thank you all for joining us here today. I'm Megan Sukes. I'm the Chief Strategy and Communications Officer for Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, and this is a GTCF Leadership in Pierce County Learning Panel. So for all of us, it's an opportunity to learn about some of the strategies, the experiences, and maybe the secret sauce of leadership from some of the great leaders here in Pierce County. But before we start, we want to thank our partner in learning, KBTC. Thank you, KBTC, for giving us the space and time to learn not only today, but to share these lessons far and wide and far into the future through the magic of the internet. This will be taped, and we hope that people will continue to learn long after today. GTCF is hosting this conversation and a series of conversations because it's not easy to be a leader. It's not easy right now to be a leader, but it never has. The good news, though, is that in Pierce County, if you're leading, if you're trying to make a difference and build a thriving community, you're not alone. There's a lot of people here, and we really believe in working together. Our panel today each had great organizations in Pierce County making a big difference, but in addition to what they do, they also came together as part of a local advisory team. Along with 4 other leaders in the community, they helped direct nearly $1.8 million for the Community Reinvestment Project from the Department of Commerce. You can learn more about that if you go to our website, gtcf.org. You can find out all the great things that you guys did in terms of directing important funding. But today we're going to talk about what you do outside of that and some of those great lessons. So please join me in welcoming Colette August, the Executive Director of the Tacoma Indian Center, Chris Lopez Moreno, Coordinator with VT Radio Universal, Farron Johnson, CEO of Amara, and Lorraine Stone, founder and owner of Animal Man Solutions Consulting and Executive Director of the Big Homie Program. So we're going to start off on a high note. We want to talk about successes, because when things go right, we learn a whole lot. So I'm going to ask each of you about a success that you've had that really shaped the way you lead, the decisions and the approaches you make. And Colette, I'd like to start with you. As you think about your work, is there something that comes to mind, a success that for you really helped you cement this is what it means to be a leader in Pierce County?
Yes, thank you. At Tacoma Indian Center, we are committed to upholding the spiritual potential of our Native peoples to realize greater healing, opportunity, and self-determination for individuals, families, and communities. We do this through programming such as Carving is Medicine and Camp Rosie, which Camp Rosie is a free youth program established in 2023 that focuses on supporting our sacred youth in their healing journeys through grief and loss. We strive to create an environment where love and support are felt from the moment you arrive until the time that you leave. Success was a recent experience of keeping youth connected to their own identity and their tribe. One example that I felt was really highlighted recently is a family of siblings that the children were in foster care and they were connected to our program. The youngest sibling developed a fatal illness, and while the extended family and tribe wanted the siblings to return to their tribe and to their family out of state, and the state, the foster care system, and also the hospital said, no, she cannot return to the family. I was able to send in an advocate to go in and advocate for the child to return home, and she was able to go home and be reunited with her family, her siblings, and also her tribe.
Does this often, I mean, if you hadn't been able to intervene, if you had a family that was in foster care and they wanted to go back to the tribe, if you hadn't advocated, do you think they would have still been able to go?
Unfortunately not. They were in foster care for quite a while, and that did not look like it would be the outcome. And so it really did come down to the advocacy that we were able to help provide.
And what's at stake for these siblings to be reunited? Why did that matter? Why was it important to advocate?
It's so important for them to be connected to their own tribe and their cultural teachings and the family's spiritual beliefs, and be able to be surrounded by love and all the beautiful things that their own culture has to offer.
So you were able to bring in an advocate, have them reunited with their tribe and some of the extended family, and then what happened with the siblings and this one sibling that was so sick?
She went home and she did pass away, and she was able to be buried with her own ancestors and then their family plot, and and since then we've been able to have them involved in our Camp Rosie programming and be able to honor the legacy of their sister. And we recently helped them have a fundraiser to have a memorial for her. And the siblings got a chance to be able to share their story and to also be connected with like her teacher from school and learn some stories, get some pictures of her 3rd and 4th grade year, which was really, I feel like, a really beautiful connection to be able to connect to that teacher and also, you know, the family with each other. And I feel like that's a success because it's kind of similar to my own experience. My dad died when I was 11, and then my mom died when I was 13. I saw my siblings suffering because they did not have the proper support and the culturally competent knowledge to be able to help them heal. And I feel like we have to have Native-led services that are culturally relevant, that can build the trust for our community and access to be able to make these positive differences for our youth.
So with this success, what did that teach you? Or is there something you took away from that that's really shaping how you move forward?
I think the biggest thing is being able to provide connection to culture and to the trauma-informed care that we're able to provide for them.
Thanks, Colette.
Thank you.
So we're going to turn now, Farron, for you, when you think about a success with your work, what comes to mind, something that really shaped how you lead?
Okay, I'm going to set a little context for that and talk a little bit about a project that are going to help kind of set the tone on where I'm coming from. So in 2010, 2011, around that time, Eastside Tacoma, there was a rise in gang activity. There was a rise in youth gun violence. There was a rise in youth being involved in things that weren't so, not helpful for them, in their journey, particularly between the hours of 3 and 6. And so the school at the time, First Creek Middle School, along with community partners, were trying to figure out how to support young people, center young people when it comes to things that are going on in their community by creating safe spaces. And safe spaces, not just after school, but like safe spaces for youth to plug in before school, safe spaces for youth to plug in during lunchtime, safe spaces for youth to plug in after school. So I was tapped to lead the pilot of that work on the east side of Tacoma at First Creek Middle School. The context with that too is the school was a SIG school, so that means School Improvement Grant is what they were on. They had 3 years to turn around their academic outcomes. And so when I walked into the school, their GPA overall was right around 1.8. And so the idea was, how do we create safe spaces for young people to get at that academic outcome, but bring it through enrichment, bring it through non-traditional school time spaces? How do we support young people when they're not in the classroom? If we do something different in that space for them, will we see some results inside the classroom just because of that? So that's kind of the context of it. And so I was tapped to kind of lead that work. And one thing I'm learning as a leader is you'll have to reinvent the wheel if you don't need to, but you also need to be able to communicate with those who are involved in the work. So when I'm tapped to come in and build a community school model is what we were calling it, it's easy for leaders to come in and say, schools need to do it this way, and young people need this, and parents need this, and community needs this. And it's easy for us to say what other folks need when we don't come from the community. We don't know what the needs are in the community. And one thing that I wanted to be very intentional around was, how do you bring in voice from all of those spaces to be able to have something successful that young people want to plug into, the school staff want to plug into, all of that. So being able to tap that, I would say, when I think about equity work, that was the foundation of that work, was how do I meet people where they are, bring the voice into the space, and be able to build something that community built. Wasn't Farron built it, wasn't, a specific person, but everyone came in and had a lean in around what that atmosphere needed to feel like for young people to now thrive academically, as opposed to being worried about what's going on in their environment, but it gave them an outlet for that. So we built that. It was very successful. Moved it into 6 middle schools, and then brought it into a K-5 school. Out of that programming, launched these young people that really wanted to activate in their community. And at the time, it started off as they would, meet during Eagle Center, is what we called the little after-school program for First Creek. They would meet and they would talk about things that were going on in their community and how could they be peace agents in their community. And so they started off eating eating pizza or popcorn in the cafeteria and talking with the teachers, bringing in community partners to talk about, we're just middle schoolers, but we feel like we could make a change, and here are some things we want to talk with our caring adults around us to help us figure out, how to move with that. Out of that, the young people continued to meet and decided to then move that programming into a school-wide, what they call a Peace Youth Summit. And so what that did was, led by these young people, they would connect with community, caring adults that they work with in community, bring them in for an all school day summit. And it involved, there's no classes for the day. The kids get the whole day, no classes, but they fill those classrooms up with workshops. They're either partnering with a caring adult to lead a workshop, or they're leading a workshop based on things they want to talk about, And so it was prevention, it was bullying, and it was social justice were the 3 topics, and they built their workshops around that. That continued to go. Out of that grew this group called Seeds of Peace, which one of the founding members is sitting in the front row right here. I'm just going to put her on blast right now, but her name is Tina Tran. And out of that, they developed this charitable giving organization that just activates in community, right? So when I think about leadership style, and when I think about a success for that, for me, a success from that is legacy, like creating pathways for young people to figure out how to agitate, how to activate, and how to move, and change, and how to bring along all of the folks that care about them in the process of it, right? So that could easily have went away when we started to move in different directions, with the Eagle Center model, but it didn't. And so for me, one thing that I say as a leader is, if you don't need to reinvent the wheel, don't do that. Make sure you're talking to community. We hear that all the time around how important voice is, particularly if you're coming from outside a community and you don't know, and so you got to take time and slow down and build culture. And when you do that, you root. And when you root, I don't care what comes your way. There's going to be challenges. First Creek went through a whole lot of different things, but the kids had somewhere safe to plug into, either in the morning, during lunchtime, or after school, and they were able to create their own organization out of just plugging in from there. So that's a success for me when I think about.
It's a big success, and it's an even broader success. And
Yeah.
when you talk about having that voice of bringing that community in, that's what makes me then think, Chris, about you and having voice and your work. So when you think about your work, what's a success that for you really has shaped how you show up and what you do as a leader?
Thank you. And yeah, that's a great story. Well, our story goes back to where we like to listen to radio, and for many Spanish-speaking people, they know that the main stations are in Seattle. And if you are thinking to maybe hear some content that you like to, that you will enjoy, that will bring some information, then you have to go and knock some doors in Seattle. Well, before the pandemic, some friends and I, we wanted to start something different, something that will be entertained, but at the same time will be informative to people. The commercial radio stations, they do some of that. I guess they are now doing it because more we know, everybody knows that the Latino population in Washington is growing up, specifically in the Puget Sound, and more services in Spanish are necessary. Back on those days, we didn't want to go to Seattle. They were charging a lot of money for being on the air, and we were like, how come? We're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we want to bring some important information, useful, entertain people, and at the same time learn a new skill. Well, we discovered that we could that here in Tacoma, and also start something here in Tacoma, because there was like no Spanish-speaking radio stations here in Pierce County, no, not at all. So we discovered this project, this online radio station that was built with the purpose of competing with the commercial radio stations, because it was a new thing. It was, let's say, online radio. At the beginning, I thought it was like not the real thing. We have to be in AM, FM. Well, now with the time, we discovered that, well, it is about limits. You know, sometimes, you know, when it's a low power FM, there are some limitations. But now with online, there is no limits for that. You can be maybe in Portland and you don't have to miss your favorite program, your favorite news, your favorite content. You can even now listen to it on demand. So with all that, discovering that Seattle was talking about like either what was happening in Seattle or in general, you know, in Washington State, there was many important things that were happening here in Tacoma. And yes, Tacoma, it's one of those unique cities that we're so community here, right? We matter. I mean, we care for each other, right? So we care for what's going on here in our area, right? We care for what's going on in other areas, but we like to hear. So what started as a game, maybe as a hobby, as let's say maybe therapy, you know, inexpensive therapy for mental health, you know, for some of my friends that helped me to put together this. We didn't know that we were actually like creating that community, you know, community radio station does that.
And you're talking about Tacoma and that,
Yeah.
you know, that little rivalry between Tacoma and Seattle. That's not very big. But then you found, after you guys got on the radio, you heard from somebody in Parkland.
That's correct, yes. Just before the next chapter, you know, a restaurant owner, he wanted to have a Cinco de Mayo celebration there in Parkland, because he's like, hey, nothing is going on here in Parkland. You know, we need to revive the neighborhood. We need to bring people together. Can you guys help me? And like, sure, you know, but we were thinking on doing something maybe downtown, maybe here in Hilltop, but Parkland, okay, sure, why not? We can bring what we have received already, microphones, loudspeakers, you know, and more important, well, our probably enthusiasm, you know, the good humor. Then the dance, right? The music, the cumbia. So we make some of that happen in Parkland, and it was great. You know, not only we gained the experience of organizing, but to seeing people really coming to make that community that is so important. And then the next chapter was the pandemic. You know, that somebody in the team was asking, well, Christian, what are we going to do? We're going to continue? Do we close these down? It's like more than ever, we have to be there in the speaker for the people that are going to have to be at home, you know. So we have to keep this take advantage of the social media, take advantage of the what we have on hand to be that companion, right? That even when we're not physically, but you close your eyes and you listen to what's going on in the radio, in the TV, and you feel that somebody's there with you in the room, right? Especially if it's the people that you listen to it almost every day. So something like that happened with the COVID, and that actually was our push into. We didn't know until then that we were doing something serious, that something was, it started as a hobby, but then it turned into something, I'm not gonna call it necessary, but very useful for the Spanish-speaking people, and for, you know, some other, I would say, folks that they were practicing their Spanish. So,
And what did you know with this success? I mean, if you went from, we've got to pay money to go up to Seattle and try and get broadcast, to here you're in Tacoma, beyond Tacoma, what did you learn from that?
I learned that when, that's why my title doesn't say director, you know, it's more about leadership. I coordinate the team. Everybody knows that we have the same value in the team, in the group, and I learned that it's better when you inspire the people to do what you want them to do, right? But you don't like promise, like the over promise, or like say, hey, we want to get this, you know, a position, a role, money, who knows? But when they come and they do it because they like it, because they are looking you doing it, and they like, oh, you know, this is fun, this is good. That's good. When they come, they train, they learn, and then you get to be away from the project, and you're in a conference just like last week, you know, with some other radio enthusiasts, you know, and you hear your team doing what you're supposed to be doing. Is like, oh, I can be in the backseat. So that has no price. I mean, it's like, okay, this is worth, you know, all like going bed very late, producing, editing, organizing, sending emails, inviting people to come and feel the joy. It's paying back. So that's what I'm thinking. It goes farther, because when we go to events and it's like you meet somebody that you don't really expect that is going to say, oh yeah, I listen to you guys, you know, I like the music you play in between. It's like, oh, really? What else you like? Oh, when you were talking about the car, or or maybe what was going on at the detention center, or when you guys were telling us like, it's okay to get vaccinated, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. So that's what I see that it's been a very successful.
That is a big success. Thanks, Chris.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Lorraine, we've been hearing about these successes. Do you have a success that comes to mind as you're hearing kind of how other people have been shaped and have learned?
Yeah, recently I worked on a project called the Peace Point Project. And Peace Point is two things. First, we describe it as a collaborative and movement of individuals who care about Pierce County and Tacoma and want to contribute to and end youth violence. The second thing we describe it as is a comprehensive report that serves as a background and a foundation for our community to have conversations and local discussions about what we need and what we need to do next and how we can work together and continue to collaborate. And so in that project, I think I was able to learn a lot about myself, but also a lot about the needs of the community and our local government, our local agencies, and just what it is that we could be doing better and where the gaps are. And I think in that project, there were so many things that just kind of came up, and there's so many areas that our community has like very deep needs, and just staying true to yourself in a process like that, and where you're doing so much outreach and you're meeting so many individuals and you're working with so many other service providers and trying to address the everyday challenges that folks are having in like their real lives.
And where did the Peace Project come from? How was it? Because you flipped it. It was coming in kind of a traditional way, and you flipped it. Where was it coming from?
Yeah, so originally it stemmed from a grant that typically produces the report every so often, and it's done in a very structured way. And that way typically involves a lot of our like department heads, and then they develop a plan that has these very specific outcomes and these very specific timelines. And so our goal was to win that grant, which we did, and produce a report that flipped it and went to the community first in order to develop their own set of priorities for those needs that they're experiencing every day and the things going on. And so, yeah, that's where it came from.
So you're dealing with kind of a bureaucratic research, and I mean, that's system change is what it sounds like when I hear you say that. What did it take for you to come in and say, I know we've done it this way for a long time, but the community needs it this way? How did you do that?
Well, I mean, it's not just myself. So I work with a group of people in Peace Point, both partners and our internal kind of leadership team. But it definitely took a lot. It took a lot of conversations with Commerce. It took a lot of conversations with our community. It also took a lot of conversations with like our colleagues that work inside of those systems to trust that it could be done differently and that they could still be a part of the process and everything that they had to say was still meaningful. So it was a lot of relationship building, a lot of meetings, a lot of community outreach, and really hard conversations.
Is there something in particular that you were able to put into that project and that report that for you feels like a win?
Yeah. So like I was saying, typically the report itself is produced with these very specific outcomes, very specific timelines. And once we were able to gather all the research and the data, we structured our report that it has 4 priority areas or 4 domains of priority. And in those 4 different domains, each community was able to bring forth strategies that they believe would work the best for their community. They were able to contribute to their own solutions and say, like, here are all the things that would work for us in these 4 different domains of priority. And the domains of priority were developed out of the direct needs and wants from the young people in Tacoma. And so we went all around to having different focus groups with young people. And we played, working with a professor from the Evergreen State College, developed like a game where they could basically get into groups and represent the different people and groups that they've seen in our community. So for example, some of them represented local government, some of them represented teachers, some of them represented specifically the mayor or city council. And so they were able to then act out how they viewed us as adults, like right now in real time, what they were seeing, and role play that. And from that, we learned a lot about like their perception of what's going on, but then they were able to have dialogue with each other and come up with solutions. There was a Democratic Party, a Republican Party, and so they had a lot of fun, but watching their solutions and how they really viewed us really showed like the good and the bad of how they seen us, and watching them work through that and come to these like, well, this is what's most important. And then we took those things, and that was the priority for what needed to happen here. And then after interviewing over 100+ service providers, we were able to learn that their priorities matched a lot of what the young people said out of those strategic sessions. And so all of those solutions landed underneath those 4 priority areas for domain. And rather than coming up with also who are our partners that should be carrying this work forward, like it's often like, well, Tacoma Public Schools should be responsible for this and that. We just created a list of like systems and agencies that are change makers in these areas where our community is struggling, and really just put on them like, if anything in this report matters to you, like we just want you to come forward and support what's happening. And out of that, a lot of people came forward and a lot of really good work happened.
So when you saw the report coming out like that, what did you know about what's important for you as a leader?
I think I was impacted on multiple levels. As an individual, I would say I became more confident in who I am and like what my role was amongst my peers and how I could support and like be like a team member and community member. And so that was a win for me personally. But then also like I learned also the importance of dealing with money, facilitating important data and research and stories and information, and still being true to yourself and your community and what you know is needed, and like managing different levels of expectations. And so for me, it was a success because I feel like all the way through that project, what needed to happen with community, which is their voices being amplified and their priorities being brought front and center, happened. And I felt like I was able to maintain true to myself and look at myself in the mirror behind every decision I made, which wasn't always the easiest thing to do in such a politicized like landscape locally. So I learned a lot.
Thanks, Lorraine. And I think, yeah, hearing from all of these are successes and none of them sound easy. They all sound like they took a lot of standing up, of advocacy, of being accountable to the community, of bumping up against systems. And when I hear that, I think, wow, I want that kind of success. I don't know that I always have that kind of success. I sometimes stumble. Things get very hard. So I'm wondering if we can kind of go to the other side of success. Now, standard, you'd say failure, but I know I was saying that because it's a big, scary one, and sometimes failure is learning. But if we look to kind of experiences, can we go to some experiences that maybe were like, okay, that didn't go as well as I wanted, and say how did that shape you? So I want you to kind of think about some of those experiences. But Lorraine, I want to stick with you because we'd had a bit of a conversation about Peace Point Project, and I know that. And this happens a lot with projects that we do or efforts. The success sometimes holds within it something that's maybe not as much of a success. What was it for you?
After the report was published, you know, we made impact in community like we see it because we were able to put grants out there for small grassroots organizations. There were changes that came in some of like our local leaders that were like, hey, we're on board and we want to know how to make this system better for folks. And there were some really great things that happened. But I think personally, like myself, I do the project with myself, Caitlin Oler and Shannon from Tacoma Boat Builders. And I think we really just we were carrying the weight of everything we had heard over a year from people all over our community. And like, it was like, what do we do about that? Like, we don't want to just come and get information and be extractive. And so we were like in this mode where we had to get everything on that list done. Like we had to make a change, and everywhere we told people that like, you know, it mattered. And so realizing that we probably could not change that entire list by ourselves. And that was a heavy, like, it was a load to carry because it makes you question a lot. Like, did I do what I said I was going to do? Did we accomplish the things we set out to do? And, you know, I realized that it wasn't actually a failure, but it, you know, I learned a lot about myself in that, like, the power in all of it was like direct service and community. And so, does that answer your question?
Well, I mean, it does resonate that to have put so much work in bringing that community, and I think that that idea as a leader, the accountability you have to a community, and to have, it sounds like a great success to push back on that report, but then find that, and as I think what I hear you saying is the implementation wasn't there, and it wasn't something you could hold.
Yeah,
you couldn't drive it yourself.
Yeah, we couldn't drive all of the implementation. Yeah.
And does that shape as you've moved forward with other projects? Does that have something in the back of your mind?
Oh, for sure. Like in my role leading and running the Big Homie program, like I feel so much more equipped for understanding. Like I already had an understanding, but it definitely broadened my horizon in terms of like what's possible and what's really needed in so many other pockets of our community, and then how they also intersect with others. And so it was really beneficial there. And then I run businesses in community, got a restaurant opening, so I'm going to plug myself.
Yeah, which one is it?
Mr. Texas Barbecue.
All right, all right.
But it's great because now I can truly think about like from that different aspects of the positions that I hold in community, like how can I show up the best that I can for those around me and be like more equitable, you know, I feel like I have pretty good integrity, but just like really checking myself, and it broadened my self-checking mechanism, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks, Lorraine. And it's not easy to talk about the things. And that, like I said, that when we had talked about that, I thought that is often what happens. You can have such huge success, and at the same time, God, this did not do what I wanted it to do. So I love you sharing how that was able to move forward for you and continue to learn. And that's why, Farron, I want to come to you next, because it's enviable with that success with Seeds of Peace and power and continuing to move. for you, when you think then about times where it didn't turn out as well, what do you think about?
I mean, I'll connect it back to the First Creek Middle School project, because over the 7 years of building and expanding that, there was time to build culture. I said it earlier, right? And when we were launching the expansion of it, we were giving ourselves a year, 15 months to first get in, get to know folks, figure out what's fit, when it comes into community. And we were able to do that expansion, and we had a pace about it that allowed us to really garner that authentic collaboration within a school. It just made it a good fit for young people. So when we did that expansion, then there was this pressure to now expand fast because it's successful, right? But, and in my gut as a leader, I'm like, oh, that's not gonna be good. If we expand too fast, there's certain seasonings that need to be added, and you're not given time to add that seasoning to it. Each school that we expanded to, all of them are different in their culture. We think all K-5 is the same. It's not. We have very, very creative schools that all they want is art programming, right? And that's what we should give them, is art programming, and not force something that's not what they're going to engage in. They vote with their feet. So we were trying to expand very fast, which I appreciated that piece of it. But the area where, I won't say failure, but the area where I feel like I didn't advocate hard enough was to slow down. And I don't know if I felt that maybe I didn't feel safe to say that. Maybe as a leader, sometimes I'm in this space, and we all talk candidly in here. You have some very powerful leaders who just, if they say it, it go, and you have some folks who are leadership in the space, and sometimes their voice goes unheard, so I don't know if that was a part of it or what, right? But for me, I feel like I learned from and will never find myself in a space to where I don't advocate for what the best outcome is going to be, whether it gets followed or not, and it goes back to when I said earlier around, blueprints, or reinventing something. If it's working, and you have a certain blueprint and pillar on how you're building something, try that first before you try to create something brand new, right? And I think, in the fast expansion of that, it almost felt forced into some spaces, because we had some schools were like, well, we don't need programming after school because all of our kids are in AAU, or they're plugged in here, or we have resources for them to be able to get free swim lessons. So we're good, but then we have the spaces where it's like, no, we don't even have access to swim, so we needed to focus on those gaps first. And we were trying to spread into spaces that already had resources, and we missed on some folks that really actually needed a gap closed there. So that was an area where I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna be a CEO of something, I don't know what yet, but I'm gonna be a CEO of something. And what I'm going to do is never come into a space and try to force or expand something too quickly, having not made sure the ground was okay, right? Because we can make decisions here and have no idea how it plays out, on the ground. And not everybody wants everything. Right? They may have resources or supports and they don't need it, but it was me feeling like I didn't go in hard enough, or I didn't apply enough pressure right there to say, slow that down just a little bit, because you're not going to see the impact here because we missed this whole seasoning right here. We didn't get that done. So that's kind of,
And I love the word seasoning. Because it is
Mr. Texas barbecue seasoning.
It's like, exactly. Like, that's going to take some time. So, Chris, how about for you? We were hearing about you with radio. You're taking on the Seattle stations. You're blazing a new trail just to have this fantastic station. Sounds like success. Is there something that hasn't been as much of a success that's really taught you?
Of course, yes. Being a leader, yes, you're right. It's not easy. It's always a challenge, and for those that work with computers, with machines, they will agree with me that when you work with equipment, you have no problems. They do what you exactly want them to do. But when you work with humans, right? Everybody, it's different challenges. You don't know. But it is back in 2022 when the health system was very important for them to deliver the right message, to everyone, to fight disinformation. they were asking us for, okay, give us a good idea. How can we be more effective by communicating? You guys are the expert. I said, wait a moment, we are trying, but we're not the expert. We need to hear from someone that is being communicating messages for a long time, but in our own language. So with the support of the Washington State Department of Health, we brought this superstar from Mexico that has been in radio for 40 years. She since she was a teenager, and then but we wanted to be very. We wanted to invite people to be, I'll say, like not to get the benefit just for our small group, but we thought, well, because of the pandemic, we still have our limitations. We couldn't really pack the place with everyone. So we have to be very intentional. Okay, who needs this benefit? Who needs not maybe the people that is professional in this because they know how to do it, but obviously they are not getting to all the audience that is necessary. So we need to bring the projects that are like us. We know they exist. We know they're there. They're in different cities, maybe different other counties. So I'm saying all this because. The idea also is to like show that we don't supposed to be competing. We don't supposed to be seen as competition. Like, okay, we're starting this project. We want to have all this audience and all these views and all these likes, but it's not about that because it'll be very naive to think that one channel is going to get to all the broad audience, out there, So we decided intentionally to invite the small projects like us. So they came, we learned together, and from there the idea of going, okay, we need to unionize. We need to get together because if we are just small projects here and there, when we want an interview, when we want to bring Mr. Ferguson to an interview, he's not going to say yes to just Voice Tacoma Radio Universal, but he might say yes to maybe a bunch of radio stations that represent the Hispanic or the Spanish-speaking audience, most of them. So that's why. But the challenge is like we haven't been successful on there because, like I was saying, humans were very interesting, and some it's different to connect, different to convince people. Like, hey, what we're trying to do is it's good for all of us, not for just me that I want to be the protagonist. No, that's the challenge, and we're still working on it. Hopefully they are watching us, so it's it's true, it's real. Yeah, we wanted to do it. So,
it is true.
Yeah.
The best intentions for community and working together, that's not necessarily going to be easy to
It's
get
not
everybody
going
to
to be
work
easy.
together.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chris.
it's still a fail.
But you're still working on it.
We're working on it. Yes, that's right.
And Colette, how about you? Now that you've heard other people talking about what's for you, does something come to mind when you think about a challenge, maybe something that really didn't go that well that did teach you?
Yeah, so the one thing that I've learned is that we have to really dot all of the I's, cross all the T's when it comes to like the administrative side and the paperwork. So when we first incorporated as a Native-led nonprofit, we did the IRS paperwork, so we became a 501c3. We did the state paperwork, so we had our UBI. We didn't know we needed a City of Tacoma business license. And that was a really tough lesson to learn, that we had applied for a grant that was $75,000 and we had been approved, and then we found out because we didn't have that business license, we were not going to be able to accept that funding. And it would take too long to get the business license and all that. So that was a really tough lesson to learn, that we had to have that city license as well. And I feel like there's not really a guidebook to show us all these different things that need to happen. But now, since that happened, I've been better at researching all the different processes are for accessing funding and, what's required on the administrative side. And I really reach out to some of the other Native leaders, and then my elders that, have done the work before me as well. And I also rely heavily on this team that we have now as well. And I'm really grateful to have such a strong community that's willing to share the information that they have, you know, because they may have already done what I'm trying to do. And like Farron was saying, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And I think, Colette, what you're talking about is something that we've heard a lot. Living in Tacoma and in Pierce County for a long time, conversations we've had with leaders, success that we've seen across the county, it does come down to that, to reaching out and asking one another, what do you got going on? Table talk.
Yep.
This conversation right now is part of that. Like, let's share it, because there's going to be a lesson, and you're not alone. Other people have had that same kind of lesson, and learning from one another. And this is really emblematic of Pierce County, this kind of cooperation, this kind of partnership. So I want to ask you guys kind of in a quick round, is there something for you that stands out about what make the history, the culture, the people in Pierce County that for you think it's important for anyone who's doing leadership to understand this is unique to Pierce County? Is there something, Farron, for you that comes up when you think about Pierce County?
Yeah, immediately 2 people pop up in my mind right now, you know, when I think about who I would like to emulate, you know, in how I move, you know, in community. And when I was with the Y at the time, Charlie Davis, he's still the CEO of YMCA Pierce Kitsap County, still the CEO. But at the time I was lifting that work, piloting that community schools work, I remember when I was coming into the space and meeting him, you know, as a CEO, on the ground, at the door, greeting everyone, no staff by name. He's from New York, so he got all this. If you know Charlie, he has this New York accent about him. Yo, what's going on, everyone? He had this type of energy that lifted his staff. I don't care what we were going through, because we probably walked in there mad about something, you know, and when you're working with young people, y'all know they get on your nerves sometimes. You need somewhere to, you know, be able to come and relax. But he always had this really cool way of making you feel like, oh, when I leave here, I'm getting ready to go change the world, you know? And so for me, seeing that modeled in front of me, again, I would tease myself around, and when I become somebody leaderboard, that's how I'm going to lead. I'm going to lift my staff, even though sometimes things are hard, right? But you have to model how you want your staff to respond and how you want to lead in that. The other person is Carol Mitchell. So if y'all know Carol Mitchell, I'll call her Mama. She's just been a pillar in Tacoma community. She's the CEO of Institute for Black Justice. And she leads with a very strong love, peace space from her. So whenever I'm in community with her, I watch how she moves in space, very well respected, but leads from this place of love. I'm not saying that I don't, but sometimes it'd be hard. But she leads from this place from, you know, space from love and from I'm listening. You know, but one thing you will not get her to do is flip on her mission and vision. She knows exactly what she came there to do. She knows exactly what her program does. She knows exactly who she is, and she will not mission shift. And she will let you know, that that's not who she is, right? So even though she's not a Charlie, you know, she leads with this more peace space around her, not so much energy, but you know where she stands in her beliefs and her values. And so those are 2 people where I'm like, man, like, I want to move like that, you know, when I'm in space, you know, with others. But you can pick, you know, in Pierce County, there's so many leaders. I know amazing leaders that fundraise their tail off, you know, and I'm like, I'm going to get underneath that covering right there because I want to learn how to raise $1 million right now, you know. And so we have so much seasoning in our space. I mean, I don't know, I thought I saw Kathy walking here, but, you know, she used to be my boss, Kathy Littman, at one point, you know, and I used to love how she leads, you know, just leads with a space of, okay, what do you think about that? You know, she'll ask you a question. You know, you're coming to get, you know, okay, can you give me some advice? And she'll turn it around and give you a question, you know, and have you think about what the solution is. So it's like a garden here for Pierce County. Yeah, I can pick, you know, and I can also pay attention to who I don't want to lead like, you know. And so I try to use both, you know, both that perspective, you know, and how I look at it. But I think Pierce County is just full of amazing leaders. Yeah.
Yeah. So important thing, knowing we've got great leaders you can learn from. Colette, for you, when you think about Pierce County and your experience leading here and bringing people together, is there something you think it's important, you wish more people knew about Pierce County, or something that leaders really need to keep in mind?
Yeah. I really liked Farron's answer as well. So it's really shifting, you know, kind of where my thought process is or was in regards to the answer. So I went to a conference recently, and they started off the conference. It was actually the Hispanics in Philanthropy and Native Americans in Philanthropy, and that was in Albuquerque. And, you know, one of the sessions that I went to was Indian 101. And so I think that that's really important for like the conversation here regarding Pierce County leaders is, for one, erasure is real. A lot of the times natives are invisible. And so I think that that's like the very important starting place is knowing the history. Knowing that in the US there's almost 600 federally recognized tribes. Knowing that in Canada there's, you know, over 600 tribes as well. And that we're all unique. And we have different needs, we have different traditions and languages, and, you know, I think that that's really important for Pierce County leaders to know and to acknowledge that in Seattle, there's a ton of Native organizations that are for the Native community. In Tacoma, there's not that many. And so I think that that is really super important to recognize that, for one, Tacoma Indian Center is a Native-led organization. We are not a tribe. And so here in Tacoma, it's the land of the Puyallup tribal people. And so I think that's also really important to acknowledge. And I think that we have to, you know, really start that with an education piece, like finding out where people are at and helping them access the, you know, information to be able to learn. And then also knowing that that's not our job to have to educate people. So finding those resources, you know, I'll gladly point you to the videos and the websites and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to do the one to follow up and learn those things yourself.
Yeah. And definitely, if we're in the space of leaders, and so that means we're all among people who say, I want to be a part of this community. I want to bring people together. That's a critical thing to know. And it's a good thing to point out, hey, this is something to learn and be aware of, because this is our community. Mm-hmm. Lorraine, for you, what do you hope people really know? Or what do you think, gosh, I really wish more people knew this about Pierce County if you're going to be a leader here?
Yeah, I think it's just important to know that there's a lot of really great leaders in this community that came before you. And I think it's important to know that there's a lot of really great leaders around you. And when you do anything, and before you do anything, you should really consider checking into those places and making sure that you have knowledge of the history of the community, of the culture, and the complete landscape to the best of your ability, and that anything you want to do, you do not have to do it alone. There are so many things that I could not have done if it wasn't for other leaders around me, but also like my dad, Lawrence Stone, who's the founder of the Big Homie program, leaders that poured into him, knowledge he was able to give me, work that was done by people who I didn't even think could impact what I'm doing today, like Pastor Ron or other folks who contributed to the East Side. There were things that I was doing work in the East Side with the Big Homie program, and at first I didn't even know how much Farron was doing. And then when I realized the interconnectedness of it all, I was just like, wow. And like, I just, you know, everything you do, there are so many other doors and so many other intersections to it. So it's just important to really go searching for that and to be working with other people in your community.
And Chris, what do you think when you think about what people need to know?
I came from Mexico City many, many years ago. And one of the things that I immediately fall in love with the Northwest, but specifically with Tacoma, Pierce County, is when I almost take a job in Seattle because they were offering me almost $3 more of what I was making here. Somebody that knew me spoke up for me. There they were looking for a delivery driver, and they just like, oh, this guy is very good with finding addresses and very good with following directions and all that. He spoke highly about me. So I drove 2 hours, you know, fighting with the traffic all the way to Lake City Way. And then, yeah, they were like showing me around, giving me this like almost 3 pages, you know, booklet of guidelines. And then it's like, this is very tempting. Should I take it? Should I move to Seattle or? And that made me be late for my job. Well, I have to stop in a 7-Eleven. That was before everybody could afford a cell phone, right? So I have to stop at the 7-Eleven, pick up the phone, and then that was, you have to memorize the phone number, right? And I called, and he wasn't my boss. He was like, I'll say more my coworker, but I guess he got a role, about me. And I was like, hey, yeah, Chris, what's going on? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, but his name was Irwin. I'm going to be late. I'm so sorry. I'm here in Seattle. And I was honest, I came to take an interview. Oh, don't worry, Chris. When you come, a hot cup of coffee is going to be waiting for you. We're waiting for you your orders are ready to take, and you take your time, buddy. Be safe. That made me think like, I think I don't care if I make $3 less. I really, really love this environment that apparently is only happening here in Tacoma. I think with a lot of people, they think that life is more important than maybe the money we can make, so that made me stay in the company, making less money. And it's like, I have someone that believed in me, that spoke highly about me, and he's seen all the things that I can maybe put all these skills to work in this small company, so we can grow this company, bigger. So then someday maybe I'm gonna be the one saying like, don't worry, we'll have a cup of coffee waiting for you when you come, be safe. That model of leadership that really made me fall in love with this area. And I have more and more stories, but I don't want to take all the time.
Well, thank you, Chris. And it's true. This is just the beginning. This is launching, and I think these conversations happen in a lot of places naturally, but we do really love the opportunity to bring people together and learn across communities, learn across experiences, because I think we all share a love of Pierce County and a belief in building a thriving community. And what I want to do is we have just about 5 minutes to maybe go even deeper into the learning by tipping over into our audience. Any questions that come up? Anything else you'd like to learn from the panel, having heard some of these experiences, these successes and failures?
Do any of you have any guidance or wisdom or advice to share on leading through difficult, stressful times like now?
That's a great question. Difficult, stressful times like now. Any advice?
I mean, one of our questions was, what do you do when you're in challenging, one thing I will say, and this is just kind of from a space of leading from Amara, is wellness is so key, y'all. Because if you do not take care of yourself, I just remember right when COVID hit, and during that time, we were forced to be still. So we were also forced into some crazy things that were happening in our country. We saw a man murdered in front of our eyes. We saw our democracy be challenged. And I didn't realize the weight of that. And now I'm in the space partnering, and partnership is hard, right? And there's all these other dynamics, and I would be in overdrive so much, but I didn't realize it in my mind. I'm like, no, but I need to make sure that I'm engaged, and I'm stuff can't fall apart. Like, I felt like I had to constantly block and tackle. And what I was doing was taking all of that stress into my body and onto myself. And I got so sick. I got so sick to where it was 2 weeks I could not get out. My body could not move, and it wasn't anything that I did to harm myself other than I allowed that heaviness to hold me, right? And so moving, when we're going through the things that we're going through right now, I remind myself, you better sit down when you hear your body talking to you, You better make sure your team is okay. Because we can talk about all the things that need to be done in our work. But are you okay, Marcia? How's everything going? Are you good, Trish? Tina, how's things going with you, right? It's important for us to be able to pause as leaders and check in on our team. And it gives a great space to let them know that we're trying to model wellness and prioritize that, because this is not easy work and we're not in easy times. So lesson learned, don't get sick like that again, right? So, yeah.
Colette, what about you? As you think about the challenges we're facing now, is there some advice or insights that you have?
Well, I've been grateful to have leaders that have come before me that, really have assured me that these kind of challenges are not new, and that we will make it through these challenging times, and that really our ancestors went through far worse. I think it's been really important to model healthy responses that are, really letting our community know that, like, this, if you're like Chicken Little and you're like, the sky is falling, they will think that the sky is falling, they'll believe you. And so I know that, like, my reaction is very important, and so I'm very cognitive of that, and really just I believe, like Farron's saying, you have to take care of yourself, so making sure that we fill our cup, and also really just assuring our communities that things will be okay. Yeah. And I truly believe that.
We've got a wealth of stories, but I want to see if we've got one more question before we have to wrap up, and we'll take the conversations offline as well, but let's see, we've got one more question here.
Thank you. One common denominator I am hearing with all of your stories is speaking truth to power. And I was wondering, what is your process in executing that in real time while balancing professionalism and staying true to your cause?
Sometimes you just got to say what needs to be said and not worry about how anybody else feels about it, sometimes. So that's what I learned. I think also in the moment, then there's other moments where I'm like, maybe I should be a little more careful how I say this one. So just really situational, but I think in either situation, the truth is that it has to be done.
Yeah, plus one, what she said. But, in addition to that, I also try to figure out, like, what am I responding to that's going to take my energy more than I can make an impact to it right now, So I also do pick my battles, and I'll speak truth to power in a different way, around, I don't know if that partnership going to work out for me. We're not aligned, in the same vision, mission, value. So that's going to rub us, and I don't need that extra energy right now. I might need to wait till they figure out and learn a little bit more, So I'll speak it that way, and then other times I'll be like, let me think about that before I respond, And to Lorraine's point, sometimes you do have to say it, but there's ways that you can say things that still can be received and heard, It doesn't have to come disrespectful, or make people feel shame about anything, right? So I try to always navigate that, when I'm talking truth to power too as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Chris?
Hold these, and stay together. Get some tacos, and be sure that everything will be fine. Yes, like Colette was saying, it's important to recognize that people went through very probably worse difficulties, and they thrive. And that's what we're here together, right? Speaking and. Stay humble, and if instead of when we are hearing that some other people is making all kind of efforts to be mean to other people, we'll do completely the opposite. We'll be more kind to those ones. I guess it's in difficult times when we get to exercise everything we learn in our communities of faith, right? So exercise to be kind to each other. Yes.
I think what comes to mind for me is that we are definitely stronger together. I'm really grateful to be in a place, like physically, where Tacoma Indian Center is leasing a space from the First United Methodist Church, which they have a nonprofit called Common Good Tacoma. And so me and Christian are actually neighbors, and I'm really grateful for that. And then we lease, Amara gives us an in-kind donation for our Camp Rosie gatherings. They have a 29-acre property, and we're really grateful to be able to have a place to connect to the land. And then I do referrals to the Big Homie program, and really appreciate the work that Lorraine does. And so I think that that's, like the first answer that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. I think it's a great place to end. Thank you guys, and thank you for the questions as well. And tremendous thanks to all of you for being here. Colette August, Executive Director of Tacoma Indian Center, Chris Lopez Moreno, Coordinator for VT Radio Universal, Farron Johnson, CEO Amara, and Lorraine Stone, founder and owner of Animal Man Solutions Consulting, Executive Director, Big Homie Program, restaurant owner of
Mr. Texas Barbecue.
Mr. Texas Barbecue. And I also want to thank the staff and leadership of KBTC for generously supporting this recording. I want to thank each of you, our live in-studio audience. You, I know, share our commitment to a thriving community. And I also want to take a moment to thank the staff of GTCF for helping bring this all together and make it happen. Thanks to all of you.